So many aspects to this. I'm really excited about the show, but I am sat looking at a fire that has just gone out. So, I'm going to have to make a decision. Do I freeze slowly throughout the show, or um, do I at some point, maybe during the news, go and try and relight my fire? Now, as you may know, if you listen to the show, I have recently moved house, and I have made probably, I guess, a fundamental error of judgment in not really paying attention to the central heating. I moved to South Wales over summer, and it was beautiful. Sunny beaches. It's been lovely. It has started to rain, and it has started to get cold. And I've looked at the central heating, and it turns out I have an incredibly expensive new central heating system that runs off an app that I cannot control from within the house. And yeah, the previous owner apparently still has control over. So there is someone out there who can turn my heating up for me. If you are listening, previous owner of my house, please turn the heating up while I try and work out how to do it myself. If you are listening from somewhere else in the country, let me know what the weather's like. I have become obsessed with it at the moment. Apparently, it is normal for rivers of water to be running down the road here in South Wales. Apparently, that's perfectly normal. I watch PE lessons out of my window, and the rain is sideways. Apparently, that is normal as well. So if you are listening from somewhere else in the country, let me know what the weather's like for you. Let me know where you are. You can text us. You can message us on social media. You can even call in. Now, as I said at the start of the show tonight, we're talking about physical education, PE, and specifically, we're going to be talking a little bit about gymnastics, which seems to come up as one of those elements that people most struggle with, most fear, maybe is the right word. And so we should be joined by our guest, Ellie. Ellie, I think I can see you in the studio there. So if you want to click that call in button, I should be able to invite you to join us, and we'll be able to hear you talk and welcome you to the show. So, Ellie, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You are coming through loud and clear.
Perfect.
Welcome to Teacher Talk Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Um, So before we get started, I guess we better find out a little bit about you. You're currently a PE teacher, I said I introduced you as, and a gymnastics coach as well.
Yeah, that's right.
How did you get into teaching? Were you a gymnastics coach before teaching?
Yeah, so I've coached gymnastics for 6 years now. But I also obviously participated in it as a sport from around the age of 3. Um, Started volunteering just when I started high school, really, sort of just grow out of it. Um, and qualified when I was 16. So started my part-time work, fully just doing gymnastics. And then went to university, studied 3 years doing PE, and then just qualified this year from my PGCE year. So I'm just currently on supply this year, doing PE and some general cover as well.
Okay, and where in the country are you based?
I'm in Warrington, so northwest.
I have to say, and this will probably upset many, many of our listeners, but as soon as you get above Nottingham, Nottingham is north for me, where I grew up. I rarely travel above. So we're talking quite north, right?
Yeah, it's in between Liverpool and Manchester.
In between Liverpool and Manchester. So what's
Yeah.
the weather like there? I did say I'm a bit obsessed at the moment. Is it raining?
It has been all day. It's a little bit brighter now, but yeah, it's not great.
Not great. And I guess, I don't know, maybe we can talk about that a little bit later on about PE teachers and being out in
Yeah.
the weather. Because honestly, I have watched where my classroom is. I have a window that points out onto our football pitch, our kind of astroturf football pitch, and I can look out the window. And sometimes I do really feel for not just the children who probably have got maths or something warmer afterwards, but the PE teachers who are out there kind of getting blown sideways. So maybe we'll get onto
Yeah.
that possibly a little later. But as I say, I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with the weather at the moment, because having moved to South Wales, I've not seen rain like it. It is something else here, one of the wettest parts of the country, they say. So you said you started gymnastics quite early. That
Yeah.
sounds early to me. But what were
Yeah.
your experiences of PE at school then?
Well, I had quite a positive experience in PE. I really enjoyed it. I was very competitive. I got involved throughout primary and secondary in like the extracurricular and the sports teams. And we were very lucky when I was in both primary and secondary. We had very good facilities for PE. So there was, a wide range of sports taught, and to a very good standard. And that this helped definitely with, you know, building my passion and my love for sport. Um, and I had very good relationships as well with my teachers. They definitely pushed for me to, do my GCSE and my A level sport and get into uni doing PE. Um, yeah, I loved it.
And I guess maybe this is, a question around it where like people have talked a lot about as we've asked these questions sort of put out on social media in the run up to this show. They've talked about a question around being too disciplined too early in a specific sport, or being a generally sporty person, which I don't like the phrasing of. But were you sporty across the board then? You were playing maybe netball, you were good at other things at school?
Yeah, I think I was, yeah, I'd say generally sporty. I had a good um, skill level across the board, and I think that was, I don't know whether it was natural or whether it was just because I genuinely enjoyed getting myself involved in sports. So I would go to clubs and I would improve my skill level. I'd even just go in and playing out with my friends, and like we'd play football or we'd play rugby, rounders cricket. You know, we'd make things out of, get the sticks out of the bushes and build our own goals. And, that definitely helped with me being generally good at sport.
And thinking back to those sort of early days, and particularly at the start, I guess this is a really interesting part for me. Is so you were doing gymnastics like externally to school when
Yeah,
you were younger,
yeah,
and then you were coming into school, and I'm from a primary background, so I'm imagining a primary gymnastics
yeah.
type lesson. As someone who was doing it, and I'm going to assume probably quite good at, certainly at a level above. Um, how did those lessons feel to you, where you were, doing something quite maybe high level outside of school, and then coming in and getting, I don't want to say a basic level, but a primary school level gymnastics in school?
Um, I think during primary school, we had quite good ish facilities, so I was able to sort of practice at my level. And I remember there was another child in my class who did gymnastics. So we always sort of stuck together. But my teacher had no knowledge of gymnastics at all. I remember her always saying to like me and my mum, like that they're not able to push me in school because, there's they can't. They don't have the training, they don't have, the safety, the facilities to do that. So it was sort of stuck at one level at school.
Yeah. Now we did have another caller there for a second. Brenda Hemphill, I think. If you want to call again, I just missed connecting you there. But if you have a question, click that call in button and you can join us. So, Brenda, if you're still listening, click again and I will try and get to connecting you just in time. Now, I do always wonder about that, Ellie, when we're talking about, particularly in primary school, and people who do it outside of school, and, how, whether we can meet their needs. But one of the things I certainly started this conversation with me this week was I said, PE I find really hard to understand, and particularly things like gymnastics that we'll talk about a little more, because it essentially for me there is a low bar and you can kind of start anywhere,
Yeah.
and then there is no ceiling to it. Literally, potentially, if it was football, I could have someone who was elite level playing football within a lesson of football where I was just introducing it to others, and that range or potential range, particularly at primary and I guess in Key Stage 3 as well, maybe less so as they get into GCSE, must be incredibly hard as a PE teacher to kind of get your head around and plan for.
Yeah, I think especially, in a sport that you're not particularly confident in or have the necessary training in, you can't facilitate for those really gifted students who excel in that particular sport, especially in gymnastics, because it's really dangerous for somebody who's not trained to support, a back handspring, for example, to then do that with a student who, even if they are capable of doing it, needed that support. And, if they were to injure themselves, it would be on you because you haven't got that training.
Yeah,
Um,
and I guess that risk, the worst I could do teaching maths as a non-specialist is confuse a child that could be undone.
yeah,
But I guess in a PE lesson, those risks, particularly in gymnastics, can be greatly multiplied. Um, Now, one of the things I also wanted to work because we're kind of skating over our topics a bit, and we are going to get back to training and what training people have. Um, but one of the things I wanted to ask you, sort of just as we're kind of feeling our way and getting to know each other, and for the listeners, is one of the things that's come out is a lot of primary schools are seeking specialists for PE.
yeah,
And again, I have an issue around this word because I don't necessarily think that some of the people being used are specialist PE teachers. I think there are certainly some multi-sport coaches going into
yeah.
primary schools. Um, but do you think that PE is then because of this kind of risk, it is an inherently difficult subject to teach or to be trained in?
Yeah, I think it's it's interesting the whole getting specialists in because, like you say, a lot of primary schools will bring in sports coaches, and there is a difference between being a sports coach and being a PE teacher, um, especially you know with primary children who won't have they'll lack the fine and gross motor skills and the coordination, and that's all stuff that needs to be taught from reception. But I think it's important that teachers are either themselves or getting in PE specialists so that they can teach these children the right things so that when they do come to high school they have an idea on what they're doing, and they're not teaching sort of not the wrong rules but maybe not the correct rules or the correct techniques that need to be brought up to then high school. And for a lot of children will take PE, take a sport from PE that they particularly enjoy, and will then go and do it outside of school, and they might find that it's different than in school, or they might have had the wrong idea of what that sport's all about because it's not being taught correctly. um, and then that obviously does come down to a lot of factors: resources, money, time in the curriculum, and a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of love for PE by teachers.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about that a little bit more later when we talk about primary school teachers are generalists.
Yeah,
We teach across everything, and it's hard to have a passion for everything.
yeah,
Um, but it's easier, I think, to sometimes fake it for some subjects than it is for others. And certainly, if you don't have a basic working understanding, I think I could probably get away with faking my passion for any history topic. Being a geographer, I could get away with faking my
yeah,
passion for a lot of things. I can't get away with faking playing a guitar. I can't get away around with faking some of the sports skills that are needed. There's a
yeah,
difference there. I think it's more than just I like football. You actually have to be physically capable of demonstrating some of the stuff, at least I would imagine. Now, we talked a
yeah,
little about specialists there as well, and it takes me on to my final little question, and that is about Joe Wicks. And
yeah,
we've talked a bit about sports and things. You've mentioned rules, things like that. They do, competitive sports exists within the PE curriculum expectations across most schools. Competitive sports and some of the rules, and also some things like dance and gymnastics as kind of specific content.
Yeah.
Lockdown happened, and Joe Wicks came in as, I'm doing bunny ears with my fingers, the nation's PE teacher.
Yeah.
And some people took that in different ways. Was it PE? Was it something else? Should we be focusing more on well-being and fitness and things? How did you see any of that Joe Wicks kind of PE? And I'm doing the bunny ears again. Those PE lessons that he was putting out.
I saw a couple. I didn't keep up with it, but I think I personally, it wasn't PE to me. That's not PE. It was more physical activity. Like I was totally for it. I thought it was great what he was doing, but the PE is more, keeping fit, keeping active, but it's games and sport. Whereas what he was doing was keeping fit, keeping healthy, keeping himself physically active. And, I understand like why he's done it, because he's trying to, he was trying to keep a bit of routine, get children, families up in the morning, get themselves active, ready for a day of school. But no, I don't think it was PE. It was definitely not PE.
It's okay. I'm 100% with you on that. I can see it as an element of PE, and
Yeah.
certainly within a broader PE curriculum, certainly staying healthy and all of those things. But when I was going through the research for this show, there was certain things, and let me just see if I can find the article right now, that I pulled out just so many quotes that were, I don't want to say red flags, but they certainly, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I agree with that for PE. But it was an article by Ian McCorkadle from this year in March, who was talking about in the test saying, is PE the most important subject of all? And these were some of the phrases that were coming out that kind of sit, PE as a way of just maintaining fitness. And so they were saying, it's kryptonite against COVID and global pandemics because we'll all be healthy. And I was like, well, it's more than that, surely. They
Yeah.
said, ensure we reignite the passion within our pupils to maintain physically active and healthy lifestyles. I'm kind of, is that enough for core PEs? It's kryptonite against global pandemics again. Our subject has the capacity to bring lifelong healthy lifestyles. You can have an amazing life when you're physically active, leading a healthy lifestyle. Do you feel that PE is about having a healthy lifestyle?
I think it's definitely a part of it. Children, should be, it's like a requirement that children have, 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity a day. But that shouldn't be down to PE to do that. That should be something that children are doing anyway, like outside of school, even just going to the park and having an hour running around playing at the park, or if they do a sport outside of school. But PE is more about, it's learning new sports. It's the same being sat in a maths lesson or an English lesson or history. You're sat in that lesson to learn, but just the difference is in PE you learn whilst you're doing. And yeah, you do keep active, but there's not enough time in a PE lesson to, do 60 minutes of vigorous activity and learn, new sports at the same time. It's difficult.
Yeah, do you know about the Daily Mile that's sometimes done in primary schools?
Yeah.
So normally what'll happen is that you'll take the kids out after lunch or after break time, and they'll go on the field or around the playground, and they'll jog the distance required or walk the distance if that's the level they're working at, to run a mile. And people were using sports funding for it, and people were kind of using it as their PE hours that they were clocking up. And I always felt a bit that, I don't know, I understand physically active is important, and yes, we can't have, but I don't know, that fitness part of it always sat a bit. I never liked the Daily Mile, as you know. I felt I'd rather have games. I'd rather have sports.
Yeah,
I'd rather have like domain specific, subject, sports specific skills being learned, people interacting with each other, tactics, all of those parts of PE, performance. You know, within the dance and the gymnastics.
yeah.
Th- There's more than just fitness, right?
Yeah, I think the Daily Mile is great. I'm all for do the Daily Mile, get the children up and out, but you have to have PE as well. They need to learn. They need to learn how to play a sport. They need to learn maybe that they have a passion for a sport that they didn't know even existed. Learn something that they didn't know, tactics, decision making, problem solving, teamwork. It's all the basic skills that children need in order to survive in school. And they're not going to learn that walking around a field doing a mile.
No,
These are
not
things that
certainly.
need
Yeah,
to be done in
no,
PE.
not on their own. And yeah, I think less and less certainly at the moment. And one of the things that I'm not sure I feel about PE moving that way towards the kind of stood in front of a screen, all individually doing our fitness together,
Yeah.
is more and more other subjects. We find ourselves using techniques that are less and less group work, and sometimes for very good reason. Very strong pedagogical evidence that us doing them individually or not in kind of sat round tables doing exploratory group work, um, that's the right way for us to go in, say, maths, in history, in those ways. So the option in PE to work as a team, to play a sport that requires interaction and communication, actually, I think that's what Joe Wicks loses in that
Yeah.
sense by doing it that way.
I agree. It was more it was just more fitness. It was more something you can do on your own, whereas PE is something that needs to be done as a team.
Fabulous. Right. Well, I'm really excited about where we go next because we're going to go to some adverts. It's been great getting to know you. Remember, if you are listening into the show, you can click that call in button and ask a question of either myself or Ellie. We're talking about PE, we're talking about sports. We're going to, after the ads, going to be talking specifically about gymnastics, why it might be scary to some people. I'm going to use that word. I know some people have said, oh, it's, training support. I'm going to say scary, why some people might be worried or nervous. Are you okay to stick around, Ellie?
Yeah. That's fine.
Fabulous. So I'm going to pop us over to the ad break now, and we will see you all on the other side.
Need support with your phonics teaching? Did you know Oxford University Press now has 3 DFE validated programs to help you? Read Write Inc Phonics, Floppy's Phonics, and the brand new Essential Letters and Sounds. Essential Letters and Sounds will get all your children reading well, quickly, using phonics books you may already have in your classroom. Developed by the Knowledge Schools Trust English Hub, it's affordable, easy to use, and makes teaching phonics with letters and sounds more effective. Whatever your school's phonics needs, Oxford has the solution. To find out more and receive support from your expert local educational consultant, visit oxfordprimary.com/phonics.
Hello everyone and welcome to the History Hotline, the hottest line for all things Black history and beyond. I'm your host, Deanna Lynn Cook, making space for honest conversations about Black, British, Caribbean and African history. Here to teach you all the things left out of your school books. Make sure you subscribe to the History Hotline on all good podcast platforms. Follow us on social media at the History Hotline on Instagram and at the History HL on Twitter to find out about new upcoming episodes.
Do you struggle with people pleasing? Is it a constant battle managing different and difficult personalities? Why not inspire, challenge, and empower your team through the MAL CPD Essential Coaching Skills for School Leaders course? Or gain practical skills to become a strong and compassionate leader through the Assertive Leadership and the Emotionally Intelligent Leader courses. All MAL CPD courses are accredited by the Institute of Leadership and Management. Find out more at www.malcpd.com. Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Ginn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Borodar Pawb, Croeso I Abertawe. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Swansea and to Teachers Talk Radio, the Wednesday Twilight Show with me, Nathan Ginn, where I am talking with Ellie Sturton, secondary PE teacher, qualified gymnastics coach, and we are talking about all things PE, getting to know her just before. So if you missed it, you can listen back at ttradio.org/listen back, where you can listen back to this or any of our shows from all of our hosts. But we have kind of met Ellie. We have found a little bit out about where she's coming from. I'm feeling we are going to be agreeing more than we're going to be disagreeing tonight, Ellie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. I think we agree that we will be agreeing more. Just an update, if you were listening at the start of the show, my fire seems to have reignited itself. So I'm getting a little bit of heat. I can see some flames from the corner of my room. So I might not freeze before the end of the show. So that is good for us. Now, one of the things that, I guess we want to talk about, Ellie, is training as part of support. So I want to start this part off with a little poll that I ran. And I asked primary colleagues specifically, because obviously one would assume, but maybe you can fill us in a little bit more, that secondary PE colleagues have had a significant amount of PE training. But I asked primary colleagues what level of training they felt that they had to teach PE. 15% said they'd no recorded training. Okay, so I don't know whether they mean at all ever, because 52% said they'd had some on their teacher training, on their ITT course. They'd had some form of training, although some of the comments coming in were saying that they just had a day, which horrifies me, and I'll explain why in a second. 22% said that they'd had some kind of school CPD. Again, maybe that's introducing a new scheme of work, maybe a staff meeting after work. But again, it doesn't sound like a lot. Only 11% said that they'd had some kind of NGB, National Governing Body, training. Now, myself, my background was in outdoor ed. And so picking up tickets, picking up qualifications was something I was used to, because you weren't delivering a session you weren't qualified in. So I taught archery. I needed to get the National Governing Body certificate to be an archery coach. I needed to get that from the Grand National Archery Association. Same for orienteering, from the British Orienteering Federation. I had to get a ticket. Same for canoeing, the British Canoe Union. You need these qualifications because the training they represent, and even to a point on my training, which was only a PGCE, I say only because of the time that I had to do training in. But within that, I did a certificate with the Welsh Cricket Board, a certificate with Welsh Athletics, a certificate with Welsh Rugby, and a couple of others as well. So it turns out I had been on my PGCE quite well prepared compared to other people. How do you feel as a PE teacher, and maybe you can explain the kind of rigor and training that you had to go through to deliver PE to year 7s? How do you feel about year 6 colleagues then, who are saying, for the most part, that they have had either no or a day's training to deliver PE?
I think it's quite worrying that these teachers, obviously they're not trained to teach PE. So how can they teach PE, thoroughly, properly to the year 6 pupils, who then have a huge jump to being taught all these different sports quite thoroughly and specifically, rules, tactics, and all the different parts of a game. It's a lot for an 11-year-old to take in one go, especially if they've never been taught that before, or they haven't been taught it properly. It can be quite a big impact on the child, and I think especially for the teacher, they're going to lack that confidence, and they're not going to enjoy teaching it. So, sometimes they might choose not to, or they'll just play a game rather than teach the sport.
Yeah, and I really relate to that as a, when you say that maybe we just play a game. I often described it as I say, when I was teaching elder ed, we often delivered taster sessions. So it'd just be doing the activity. It wasn't really coaching. It wasn't really development. It was, okay, so today we're going to do this. And I hear that a lot in primary PE. Oh, we're doing football at the moment. Not whereas, the rigor in other subjects now, you hear people talking about the learning objectives and they're learning specific. Still, I think in primary PE, sometimes we talk about, we're doing football at the moment. And I'm kind of like, well, what doing what with football? You're just going to kind of kick some balls around aimlessly. But the worry for me, and this is where I guess we'll get onto the gymnastics more specifically, is that there are safety rules that exist around sports, right?
Yeah.
At primary level as well, but I imagine at secondary they exist, because I know certainly being told that there are limits around what certain age groups can do for distance running.
Yeah.
But even at primary school, there are rules around what sports we can teach in certain ways, and rugby is a great example of that. If I've had no training and I like watching rugby on telly, apart from hopefully realizing that it would be fairly silly, what's to stop me introducing the scrum to my year fives? Do you see what I mean with the worry for
Yeah.
that? And I imagine that you would have similar worries when we talk about gymnastics.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're unaware of what's safe for that age, then you're gonna have you're just gonna think that that's fine. You're gonna think, yeah, I can go and teach my 8-year-olds how to do a scrum, when really they've not developed, their bodies aren't developed properly to do a scrum without injuring themselves. And that's why obviously that isn't taught until year 8, 9. And even then, not all children, children maybe in the lower set of PE may not be taught that, because they're not ready for it. They're not confident enough to do it without, the risk of there being an injury.
Yeah, and so I guess for me, the training, and I do get maybe, I don't know what it is about me, but I get fixated on collecting badges and certificates and things. Maybe I was in the Scouts too long, but collecting those tickets, they represent a level of training and expertise.
Yeah.
And that I would then sign off to say, I understand the rules for these things. And I remember them being really shocked as a PE lead when I was in primary school. And one of my first leadership roles was as a PE lead, having this Bible of guidance from the county council put in front of me, and realizing that a lot of the staff didn't know what was in there. And that I found really shocking at a primary school level, because I walked into the PE shed and found metal javelins. And I
Right.
found metal shot puts, and I found not just fun foam discuses, but the proper weighted, dense rubber
Yeah.
discuses. And I was like, "What are these doing here?" And they had a high jump. And I was like, well, has anyone told you what is dangerous, what isn't dangerous about this? And I had grown up as the son of two PE teachers. So I had a little understanding that, hang on, I knew enough to know something was wrong. But I worry that without that knowledge, maybe we are risking something at primary school level around it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's concerning that that school had, metal javelins, like even at high school, like it's so regimented. That lesson is, I've taught a javelin lesson with metal javelins before, and they really reiterate the safety. You do not move until we tell you to move. You don't go in front of the white cones until we tell you that you can move. Do not throw until, obviously, again, the teacher tells you to throw, because you hear them horror stories of children getting hit by a metal javelin, by a metal shot put, and you know unfortunately, there's no coming back from being hit by a, I don't know, 10-kilo shot put. It's horrific. And teaching that to, 6, 7, 8, 9-year olds is, it's frightening, because it's scary doing that in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately parceled them up and phoned up the secondary school and asked them if they wanted them,
Yeah,
because I didn't want them even around, because I fear that is one of the things that if you have the stuff laying around, people will think it's there to be used and
yeah, exactly.
kind of go, oh, well, yeah, I give it a go. Why not? And not put the safety in place. That leads us on to gymnastics. Okay.
Yeah.
Because for me, not in a sneaky, nasty way, but gymnastics is almost one of the like, it gives you a false sense of security of around the safety issues of it,
Yeah.
because oh, we all do forward rolls,
Mhm.
oh, the
Yeah.
kids all do cartwheels in the playground. So do you see what I mean? It gives us like a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Now, it's worth noting, if you are listening live, you can call in if you have a question. Join the conversation. You can text in, and I will read out your questions live on air, and we will try and answer them. But Ellie, you put out a poll sort of asking, why do teachers lack confidence in teaching gymnastics? Do you know what
Yeah.
the results were? Or
Yeah.
would you like me
Yeah,
to read
I've
them
got
out?
them here.
Are you going to read them out
Um,
for us?
yeah, I've got them here. So it was actually really interesting to see, because there's a few people did make comments, and I got a few DMs from people like sort of discussing, what their worries and concerns were about gymnastics. But 50% of the people said that they lacked the knowledge. So which from the comments, I had people saying they've just never had any training in it. They've never, been taught how to teach gymnastics, especially safely. And then I had 21% struggled with ideas. So, what to put into the lessons, how to actually teach it. What do we need to teach? Then 16% said they were scared to teach it. Again, fear of injury, height, and then, fear of teaching it wrong, fear of not being safe. And then there was a few people who said um, that the lack of prep time and the lack of equipment was a fear for them, because it takes a long time to set up the equipment, especially if you're going to be using vault, bars, rings, beam. You've got to set up mats, crash mats, all the equipment, and that it doesn't take 5 minutes. It's not something you can do at the start of the lesson. You've got to have time before the lesson to do it. And then obviously another issue being the lack of equipment. I had somebody message me and tell me that at their school they only had mats, so they had no idea what they could do for lessons. But there is still a lot you can teach, but it's, for some it's not as exciting as and fun if you can't get all the equipment out and have a go at, trying out new things that is exciting.
Okay, so
Yeah, and then
from sort
go
of
on.
all of these ideas together, and so we know that people lack a knowledge in gym. So I'm guessing that some of that is around the progression, some of it is around what the purpose of gym is. But what do you see as being sort of, what is the core thing, the core being of gymnastics? What is it, our core goal of gymnastics?
I think gymnastics is all about finding out how your body works, finding out what different shapes, balances, movements that you can do with your body, because it's not, it's not a basic movement. There's so many different things that you can do with your body to make it look, aesthetically pleasing, which is obviously a big aspect of gymnastics and dance, is putting together a sequence of movements that looks good to the eye. And I
Okay,
think a
no,
lot
I
of
really
teachers forget
like
that.
that. It's putting together a sequence of movements that look good to the eye. So if I'm starting with that as my basic kind of understanding, okay, so I know this much. What I know is that my lessons, and hopefully people have got support and planning, because for me there is nothing worse than teachers being left in the wind of schools just saying, oh, you need to do a half term of gymnastics based around fire. That is upsetting to me when that happens, but
Yeah.
that's my basics of it. What is bad gymnastics going to look like teaching then? If I start putting something together, I say, okay, I can, we can look at some shapes. I can build up a series of lessons where we're looking at some shapes. I can maybe do that over some apparatus or on some apparatus, I guess. At what point does it fall apart for me?
I think, the big thing being unsafe, unsupervised, and unstructured lessons. So if you're planning a lesson that's unstructured, there's no structure to the lesson. It's just, today we're going to look at rolls, and then you're doing a little bit on floor, and then but on the same lesson you're moving on to doing something on a piece of equipment, and they may be not ready to move on to that piece of equipment yet. It's, you've not set up the equipment safely. There's no crash mats or mats, and you're maybe focused on something else whilst somebody's using an equipment unsupervised. That for me would be the biggest worry of a bad lesson in gymnastics, because that just screams somebody's going to get injured, and it can be quite serious, especially when you're getting the apparatus out.
So if
And then,
I've got bad lessons where I clearly haven't understood the apparatus, the safety around them,
yeah,
and a school should have guidance on that. It should have risk assessments. It should have training for one of every school I've been at, and I would hope other schools do too. Before you can use the gymnastics equipment, particularly in primary schools when we have wall bars that need getting out and locking into place, you have to have some kind of training to be shown how to do it, and it goes on your CPD record. Yeah, been shown how to do that. So but I'm really interested in you talk about unstructured kind of time, and I guess there's a learning risk there as well, because I've often seen it where it's kind of, okay, we've got a gymnastics lesson, I've got some equipment out and everyone knows how to use it, and there's mats and it's all safe, but okay, you need to explore for me some shapes to do with fire, and I want 5 shapes and a bit of movement, off you go. There should be teaching right within it. There should be an introduction and a demonstration and some things that they're learning.
yeah. So the easiest thing I suppose to do, because I'm all for it being like a guided discovery kind of lesson. Throw the questions at them. What kind of shapes can you make with your body, but put a few resource cards out, put some skills cards out that have got examples on, maybe show a video if you've got access to that sort of technology. And if you've got a gifted child in that class who's, strong gymnast, have them maybe give a few ideas, and then, float around the room a little bit, give them some suggestions off the resource card. And then it just makes everything a little bit more structured. They've got a clear guideline of what that skill, that movement needs to look like in order for it to be aesthetic and safe.
And so this would be maybe our kind of cut through where I'm saying, unfortunately, I am a slightly past his prime gentleman, and I am trying to demonstrate some gymnastic shapes that maybe I can't quite fit into anymore. But I can use resource cards, I can use video clips to help that, and it's not going to detriment too much my teaching.
Yeah, I think there's loads of cards, especially, on TES and on these sort of websites. I purchased one when I was doing my placement, and it was just an A4 piece of paper with balances on it, and it was like partner balances, and they were color coded from easy to hard, and there was some mid-level ones, and I just put them out on the floor and said, sort of do pick the ones that you feel comfortable doing, start on the green, the easiest ones, and move your way up. Try and put them into a sequence, try and make them look nice. And then when I spotted, a correct balance that looked good, stop the class, tell everyone to look at this skill, look at this balance, and everybody gives it a go. And it's just the easiest way for you, if you're not confident in teaching or showing gymnastics yourself, how to get that across without having to actually do it.
And I guess as a PE teacher, and feel free to ignore this question if you feel it's too much. But even as a PE teacher, so you're a PE specialist, there must be some sports where you're not as proficient, and particularly at secondary level, as some of the children that you're going to be teaching, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple of sports, like hockey, for example. Hockey is not my sport. I'm not confident in teaching hockey at all. But if I have a child in my lesson who is good at hockey, I'm absolutely going to use them for all my demonstrations, because it's just easier for me and easier for the class to understand what it's supposed to look like.
Brilliant. So we've talked a little bit there about the risks of gymnastics. Why do you think it is gymnastics? What this has come up a lot, that people talking about gymnastics as the one that they're most scared of. Why do you think gymnastics?
I think when you watch gymnastics on telly, it's always like Olympic level or national level, and it is impressive and it's scary. They're doing like triple twist back somersaults, and you look at that and you think, oh my god, I can't do that, I can't teach that. Like I could never even begin to imagine teaching that. And even myself, like it's not something that I would ever teach, because I'm not at elite level. But what people don't see is that it really is simple. You don't have to teach that. But if you wanted to teach gymnastics, you just break them skills right down. And I think teachers don't really see past that, the fact that it is impressive. These big skills are impressive and they are hard to teach, and it is scary, especially when you're watching it on the telly and you hear these horror stories of people getting injured and ruining their careers because they've landed funny on their ankles or their knees, and they think, oh god, if that happened in my lesson, what would you do? Like it's frightening, it is scary, and I completely understand that. But I think the more people actually see that high school and primary school level gymnastics, you can just start from as simple as making a tuck shape with your body, making a pike shape, a star shape, and then seeing what you can do with them movements, rather than jumping at the deep end and getting the beam out and doing somersaults and stuff off the beam.
Now, we've had a text in from Jenny who said, thanks, you've really boosted my confidence with gymnastics, which is lovely to hear. Jenny, if you wanted to call in, you can click that call in button if you had a specific question, or if you wanted to text us in a question to ask our guest Ellie, then we will ask that as well. But thank you there, because the thing that I take away from that, Ellie, is you're right. When I think of gymnastics, I think of the Olympics and what I'm seeing. But when I think of football, I think about football in the park, and okay, so I watch, I do watch football on telly, but I have a completely warped perception, I guess, or maybe a lot of people do, of pitch, no pun intended, of the pitch of the lesson for what I'm doing there, because I'm looking, you're right, at elite level work, and the other one, I'm kind of comparing it to I guess age appropriate, skill appropriate level stuff. So that is a real takeaway for me. Now, Ellie, have you got a rush off, or are you going to stick around for a little bit?
No, I can stick around.
Stick around, because what I want to do is I want to go to the news, and then I want to pick your brain about PE pedagogy. Okay, I promise not to ask any more really hard, in-depth questions. I might put you on the spot about PE teacher myths and kind of stereotypes. But if you're happy to stick around after the news, we'd love to keep talking to you. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, cool.
Fabulous. Okay, well, listeners as well, we are going to the news, and we will see you on the other side to talk more about PE pedagogy, why it's the best, and also talk about some PE myths about PE teachers, and sorry, Ellie, why they're the worst. Okay, off we go to the news, and we'll see you all on the other side.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk radio news. The government has laid out plans to make offering, advertising, or providing essay writing services to university and college students for financial gain illegal. The new measure will be part of the Skills and Post-16 Education Bill, which hopes to transform further and technical education. The Department for Education said it hopes the criminalisation of essay mill services will stop students from falling prey to deceptive marketing techniques from contract cheating services. The latest coronavirus figures show that 204,000 students were absent in England last week due to contracting or having close contact with the virus. This equates to 1 in 40 students off school in England, up from 1 in 80 on September the 7th. Teaching unions have called the statistics grim and fear it is the unvaccinated status of the majority of 10 to 19-year-olds that is causing the rise. That was your latest Teachers Talk radio news.
Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Ginn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Borodar Pal, Croeso I Abertawe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Swansea. And you find me, Nathan Ginn, here on Teachers Talk Radio on the Wednesday Twilight Show, talking to Ellie Sturton about PE, gymnastics, PE teachers, PE pedagogy, the whole lot. We've rolled it into one big ball, and we are discussing it all. So, Ellie, welcome back.
Thank you.
And now I did throw a little curveball at you just before, and then I muted you to go away, and I said that PE teachers were the worst. Now I should say, I'm going to put it out there. I am the son of 2 PE teachers, or 2 PE trained teachers. They later went on to teach other subjects. So I do feel that I have, some leeway in being marginally poking fun at PE teachers. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are, I'm going to read you, we'll set the scene on a positive, because this was a tweet that came in from Chris Moyes, at Chris Moyes, who said, if you want to see fast, relevant starts, brief and accurate explanations, chunked tasked, great modelling, verbal feedback at its best, adaptive teaching, and highly responsive and adaptive teachers, go watch PE teachers. Okay. I can't help but agree. I trained, I guess, my first teaching experience was teaching sports, or at least teaching outdoor ed sports. But do you see all of those things in PE teaching when you transfer it back to other lessons and people are sort of saying, oh, you need to give verbal feedback? Do you kind of go, yeah, I know. How do you feel about PE pedagogy?
I think that was spot on, really. It's a lot more than what people think that it is. Verbal feedback is like a given, obviously, because you can't just sit there and watch somebody, a student learn a sport and not say anything, especially if they're doing it, incorrectly, and they need, pushing in the right direction. That's all part of the subject. It's all part of teaching PE. You've got to give lots of praise and lots of reinforcement. It's natural. It comes completely naturally. I find it really difficult to walk around my lesson and not say something, even if it's just like, great work, guys, fantastic, try it this way, or make sure you're watching your footwork if we're doing netball. It's just completely natural.
Yeah, I recognize that in my teaching style in the classroom is very much active and around. And when I see
Yeah.
PE teachers, you know, there is almost constant feedback, constant encouragement as well, I think, you know, of, yep,
Yeah.
that's it, keep, you know, and I don't necessarily, or certainly I feel that other areas of teaching were late to catch on to that as a possible way of keeping children on task.
Yeah, I think what needs to be recognized is, like, especially in PE, you've got to keep these children motivated, because a lot of the time, and you know, I don't want to be stereotypical, but girls, it's difficult motivating girls to do PE a lot of the time, and you've got to be constantly telling them, you know, that they're doing a good job, and that, you know, what they're doing is right, and that they look, it's all looks good what they're doing, you know, that sort of stuff, to keep them going and keep them active, keep them wanting to join in. Otherwise, you're just going to lose them, and that they're just going to think that they're rubbish.
And like you say as well, the feedback is almost inbuilt with PE, right? You know, it is that there's constant tweaking in that sports coaching approach. It's kind of almost about constant feedback, not just that you're getting from the teacher or from a partner that you're working with, but also you get it from the outcome almost immediately with PE. You know, if I am learning to spin a rugby ball as part of a pass, the answer is there immediately, whereas in maths I might have to wait for an answer sheet, or in English I might have to wait for it to be marked. PE is all about instant feedback almost, isn't it?
Yeah, 'cause if you don't give that instant feedback, that child's going to walk away thinking they might have done something right, when actually it was, you know, not the correct technique, or not maybe the safest technique that they were using, and you know, that causes all kinds of issues. You know, they need to know there and then that that's not correct, otherwise they're not learning anything in that lesson.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, don't get me started on primary school toe punts. There is a stage where kids go through in primary school football where they learn that if you know, toe punt the football, it'll ping off really, really fast or really far.
Yeah.
And that seems like a really great idea because you're achieving the desired result, I guess, that the ball is pinging off fast and far towards the goal. But it's a terrible kind of habit to pick up, right? And it needs to be addressed so that the kids aren't carrying that forward as their only way of kicking the ball is toe punting it down the field.
Yeah, exactly. That's, and especially if they're not taught that in primary school, then when they do get to high school and they are just toeying this ball around the football pitch, it's quite frustrating, because then they're thinking, well, no, I've been doing it right all these years. And it's like, well, no, it's not right. And then that you've got to try and turn that all around and teach them the correct technique. And it, you know, it's a habit, isn't it? They come into this habit that you've got to then try and break.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so that is my little bit. Okay, so we're doing that kind of sandwich approach where, well, we've said lots of nice things. Here's a little bit more controversial. There
Okay.
are some negative stereotypes out there, right? Or negative
Yeah.
of PE teachers.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I mean, in general, you are much earlier in your career than I am, so I'm going to assume much younger than I am. So potentially, all of your teachers were modern and wonderful and lovely, um, but certainly I have a recollection or an experience of PE teachers who were, I guess, you know, making us do press ups in the snow for rugby practice would be one of my examples. You know, sort of that. You know, this is the 80s, so you know, there was some fairly mean spirited ex-army type PE teachers out there.
Yeah.
Do you recognise any of those stereotypes in the modern PE uh, co- uh, collegiate cohort?
I think, yes. I think I've come across teachers who are, you know, a little bit older, that have been teaching PE for a long time, they don't really adapt their teaching to the modern changing, you know, teaching of PE, and it is, you know, very regimented. You know, it's all very command style teaching. You will do what I say, how I say it, rather than getting them to sort of discover it for themselves. Um,
Oh, okay. I see. I was expecting you to say no. The dinosaurs are gone, and us new generation are here. But there's still some of
No.
this going. So, describe for me a little then, because I still imagine PE as somewhat as my PE in school, which is where I guess drills and not so many skills. So, what's a modern kind of PE pedagogic approach then? What kind of things are you looking for? Are you doing?
So like a standard scheme of work, I suppose, would be like over 6 weeks, and you'd do, each lesson would focus on a different aspect or a different skill of the game, depending on what year you're in. Obviously, as you get through high school, you start focusing less on the skill and more on the tactic and the dynamic of the game, and how to be competitive and how to win the game. Whereas, in year 7, you're learning the skills in the game. So, you might start off with passing, and you'll do, maybe 2 or 3 passing drills, learning how to correctly pass. You'd probably do it then in a small competitive situation, like it may be a conditioned game at the end of the lesson. And then, you'd work every week at something new. And then the end of that term, that block, you do your big game and you'd have everybody involved. That's that's sort of how we're taught to do it now, and that's how a lot of schools will do it. But yeah, you do unfortunately still get your teachers who will just drill, and sort of they lose the fun side of it. Like, kids love experimenting with these things. They love going out and trying out different activities and new games that maybe they've never done before, and it can be as simple as a warm-up activity rather than just doing 2 laps of the field. Play a game, have somebody lead the warm-up, like a pupil lead the warm-up. It needs to be fun and like exciting.
Okay, so that is our goal. But yeah, as I say, I think still out there are some of these myths, and you see them in TV shows and comedy shows of
Yeah.
that it's really easy to depict. I think PE teachers maybe get a bit of a bashing because they're really easily stereotyped. And
Yeah.
of course, you get to wear like jogging bottoms all day, right?
Yeah, it's great. I love wearing my comfies to work.
See,
It's great.
there's no just accepting of that. I tried to poke fun, but you're just like, yep, fine, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I want to read out to you. Okay, so what I want to do is just a little bit. I'd like to run through before we maybe just discuss a few of our tweets, maybe after the next ad break. But what I've got here is I've got an article by James Atkinson. It was 2019, this article, but I think they still stand true somewhat. It's 5 things you should never say about PE. Okay, specifically some of these in primary, but I want to get your opinion on some of these, right? So here we go.
Okay.
Number 1, I can't teach PE. Okay.
Okay.
What would you say to a teacher who said that? You've met a primary colleague, maybe it's someone from a feeder school, that they've come up to you and said, I can't teach PE.
Well, I'd probably just be like, have you ever even tried to teach PE? Because it's not, it's nothing different. It's not that it's not easy, it's not difficult, but it's, if you follow a lesson plan, if you follow exactly what needs to be taught, it's not, the hardest thing in the world. I mean, I've obviously only ever trained in PE, so I can't sit here and say it's difficult, but
Ellie, you are doing a
what
fab
sort
job.
of-
You've pretty much read off exactly what the author of this piece has said. They've said classroom pedagogy doesn't change with PE. It's just a different environment. If you can teach,
Yeah.
you can teach PE, and well-planned and resourced lessons, it's there for you. So
Yeah, exactly.
I honestly, as I say, I was a multi-sports type instructor, and I had never done I got a coaching certificate in fencing, like sword fighting, fencing,
Yeah.
and I'd never thought about doing it before. But it turns out once you kind of understand some of the principles, the skills, it's really enjoyable actually, and well worth doing. I would advise that if anyone can afford foam foils, they are better. But get your school a fencing club, because it is brilliant. It's like chess but physically active chess. You know, it's all tactics, all, you know, consideration of reading body language. Brilliant. But it was just applying what I knew from other sports to a slightly different discipline with slightly different rules. And I feel that about any subject, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think like a good example I have of that is on one of my placements on the curriculum, they had Gaelic football.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I've never ever played. I've never, you know, I've watched Gaelic football on the telly a little bit. Like I had an understanding of sort of what it was, but I didn't know the rules. I didn't know what I was doing. But once I watched a lesson and I did my research and broke it down, it's just a mixture of, like, you know, we've got volleyball, rugby, football, and you just put it all together and you've got Gaelic football, and it's really that simple. And the rules, again, it's just a combination of rules from different sports, and they've just shoved it all together and called it Gaelic football.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, some people do talk about it, say the same thing about languages, but I do feel the same way about sports, that, you know, picking up your first sport is something, but then once you pick up your second, your third one's easier, your fourth one's easier. And actually, you know, they become easier and easier once you learn how to teach a sport. Picking up the next sport then is easier and even easier. So number one, then, I can't teach PE. Ellie is saying shut up, I think it was, or something. I'm probably going to say something a little bit more supportive, that it is possible. But there we go. Number two, I don't teach PE, as in they're saying here, I've got a sports coach. I don't do it. I'm not, you know, dismissive. I'm not interested. I don't teach PE. What would you say to them?
I think I'd just say, like, well, you can teach PE, and just because you don't, it doesn't mean you can't. Again, the same thing. If you can coach a sport, you can teach PE. There's not much difference in it. I suppose it's just sort of the style of teaching, and again, following a lesson plan. It's all there in front of you. There's no reason why you can't and why you shouldn't.
You know, I agree with you entirely. I think those first two are very similar. Although I think, you know, I don't teach PE. If you're just palming it off, actually, if you know, you need to at least take responsibility for the health and fitness and attitudes towards sport part of it, even if you're not delivering the actual lessons. Because primary, certainly, they should be embedded throughout the curriculum and throughout the school. And the only other thing I'll add to that frustrates me intensely as a school leader was other schools misusing sports premium funding, because you can use it in very specific ways for sports coaches if they are going to support teacher development, but not just so your teacher can have extra PPA. It's supposed to be watching them, learning from them, and growing. Okay, on to number three. This is one I hate. I think I've already mentioned this. Today we're doing basketball.
Yeah, but you're not doing basketball. You're learning how to play basketball. If somebody said to me, we're doing basketball, I'd expect to be playing a game of basketball for the whole lesson, because that would be like doing basketball, would be actually playing the game, and I wouldn't be learning anything. I'd just be playing it how I would play the game, rather than saying, you know, we're learning how to play basketball. You know, these are the learning objectives, the learning outcomes. This is exactly what we will be learning, and you will be able to do this by the end of the lesson. You're not doing it, you're learning it.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that one. Break small steps, learning objectives broken down.
Yeah.
You know, you're not, you know, not task learning. What's the learning? What are we developing on? What are we going to be better at or understand more by the end of the lesson? Yeah, we're not doing basketball. Now, remember, if you're listening in the studio, you can, of course, text in or call in if you have anything to add about our discussion tonight about physical education and PE. But number 4, Ellie, is, this actually made me cringe as I just read it. Let's play a game. How do you feel about that? If you heard that at the start of a PE lesson, let's play a game.
That's quite broad, isn't it? What game? Is it a game like an activity game, or is it a game of the sport?
You've kind of jumped in. I can tell you've got a sports mindset on, because I read that as like let's just play it's something silly. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, let's just
Oh,
play a
okay, yeah.
game. Like, I don't know. Let's read on a little. We wouldn't expect a child to write a fantasy story in English without teaching them the necessary techniques. Oh no, maybe they have gone the way they've gone. I think they mean jump straight into let's play a game of football.
So which is obviously like you can't just jump into a game of football. Like they said, you can't just ask a student to write a story if they've got no idea what needs to be included in that story. You know, you can't ask. It's too much of them to ask. It's like in math, you can't ask them to, you know, complete this equation if they don't know, you know, how to complete the equation. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Okay, we've had a question text in from Dorian saying, is it simply my personal experience or do PE teachers tend to be a bit nifty at teaching geography too? Now, before I ask you this, Ellie, I'm going to say I have
Yeah.
noticed that certainly that PE teachers, when they get pulled over into the classrooms, they sometimes pick up a bit of geography as well. I know I've said that I was sporty or certainly had a sport background, and I did a geography degree. Ellie, how good are you at geography?
I'm actually quite good at geography. I did GCSE geography and I got a B. And when I am teaching, and during university, it was used quite a lot, geography within the PE lesson. So in order to, you know, pick team captains, you'd shout out, what's the capital of, I don't know, what's the capital of Sweden? And whoever called out the correct answer would then be the team captain. You know, little things like that.
I suppose it is
And
spatial. Geography is spatial, isn't it? You know, it's movement around space. It's probably outdoorsy, maybe. Like, did you do Duke of Edinburgh? Were you one of those people? You got out hiking and camping?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay.
I'm not a camper, really. I'm not. I'm outdoorsy, but camping. The walking part didn't bother me, but the camping part wasn't for me.
So yeah, maybe I think there's a link there that, you know, people who are physical, the geography field trips, maybe, I don't know, but that is a good spot, Dorian, there on the text. Because I think maybe there is a link there somewhere. Okay, number 5, and this is the last one, just for this little section of our things you should never say about PE. I honestly, if you don't finish your writing, you can finish it in PE.
Yeah, see, we talked a lot about this. This was like a huge discussion point at university when we studied PE. And it's the same with taking children out of PE to study for exams. It's got to be up there with one of the worst things that you can do to a PE teacher, because it's like, imagine walking into a maths or an English lesson and picking a student out to do PE. Like they just would never have it, because I think it's the respect that teachers have for PE is just not quite as high up on their list as your other core subjects. I think people forget that PE is still a core subject, and it isn't just playing a game. It's still
it isn't just
learning.
a bit of fresh air, or get to have a run around. It really ties in well with a tweet, one of the tweets we had about the show, which was from a Rachel V. Powell, who said, I'm not sure it's saying about teachers not wanting to at primary wanting to teach PE, saying I'm not sure it's us saying we don't want to teach PE. It's saying we feel more responsible for our children's standards in maths and English. And again, I think you're right. It's, you've got this to finish off. When can we take you out of something? Oh, we'll take you out of PE. And that, I've heard that a lot, I guess.
It happens. It happens a lot. You find that, especially coming up to GCSE season, that when they're planning out your exam study timetable, they'll take core PE off year 11s because they find that they can be doing, I don't know, finding that time more useful for studying, when obviously in reality, maybe year 11s, girls in particular, don't join in with PE as much as a younger pupil will, but it's still that hour for them is away from an academic subject. They can go and have some fresh air, and they can, let off a bit of steam, let out a bit of stress, and think about something other than their GCSEs. But instead, they take that off them, and it's exams all throughout the day.
Hey, and don't get me started that they've also taken the sports hall off you probably to fill it with tables and chairs. So you've already lost
Oh,
that
yeah,
space as well during exam
yeah.
season and responses. TSCW has a message in 100. Yep, really agreeing with what you're saying there. Now, Ellie, we've got one more ad break, and then when we come back, I've got a couple of tweets that I want to ask you. You still okay to stick around? Because I'm really enjoying
Yeah.
this conversation. Yeah?
Yeah, no, of
All
course.
right,
Yeah.
listeners as well, remember you can call in, you can text in, and we will see you on the other side of these breaks, where I will marginally be poking fun at Ellie for admitting that one of the best things about being a PE teacher is she gets to dress down all the day, like a non-uniform day every day. But we will see you on the other side of these adverts to answer some tweets and maybe some of your questions that you text in. So see you on the other side.
Need support with your phonics teaching? Did you know Oxford University Press now has 3 DFE validated programs to help you? Read Write Ink Phonics, Floppy's Phonics, and the brand new Essential Letters and Sounds. Essential Letters and Sounds will get all your children reading well, quickly, using phonics books you may already have in your classroom. Developed by the Knowledge Schools Trust English Hub, it's affordable, easy to use, and makes teaching phonics with letters and sounds more effective. Whatever your school's phonics needs, Oxford has the solution. To find out more and receive support from your expert local educational consultant, visit oxfordprimary.com/phonics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the History Hotline, the hottest line for all things Black history and beyond. I'm your host, Deanna Lynn Cook, making space for honest conversations about Black, British, Caribbean, and African history. Here to teach you all the things left out of your school books. Make sure you subscribe to the History Hotline on all good podcast platforms. Follow us on social media at the History Hotline on Instagram and at the History HL on Twitter to find out about new upcoming episodes.
Do you struggle with people pleasing? Is it a constant battle managing different and difficult personalities? Why not inspire, challenge, and empower your team through the MAL CPD Essential Coaching Skills for School Leaders course, or gain practical skills to become a strong and compassionate leader through the Assertive Leadership and the Emotionally Intelligent Leader courses. All MAL CPD courses are accredited by the Institute of Leadership and Management. Find out more at www.malcpd.com. Live from Swansea, this is the Twilight Show with Nathan Ginn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Borodar Pal, Croeso i Abertawe. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Swansea. Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio Twilight Show on this Wednesday with me, Nathan Ginn, and I'm talking to Ellie Sturton, PE teacher, gymnastics coach. We have been talking about everything PE this evening, a whole PE episode. We have talked about some tips for gymnastics, about where it comes from, some advice on PE teaching in general. We've talked a little bit about the myths. And if you have missed it, you can listen back at ttradio.org/listen back, where you can hear this show or shows from any of our hosts all the way back as a search feature. So if you have a keyword or something that you're looking for to enjoy or to help with your CPD, type that keyword into the search bar and it'll pull up all of the shows, all of the guests with all of the hosts, and you'll be able to find what you're looking for. Now, Ellie, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for staying with us. It's been great talking to you about PE. I know I have been slightly teasing at points, but I do really appreciate the feedback and the kind of honesty with which you've shared with us some of your thoughts on PE. I think that's really helpful to people, particularly when they're listening. I think it was described, Teachers Talk Radio, as a bit like a kind of live staff room. where, you know, we
Yeah.
are openly and honestly discussing these things, which you have added to immeasurably tonight. But we have some tweets that I would like to read out. Now,
Okay.
this is a kind of a toughie one, which is, for me, since I've been teaching, I think has been an ongoing battle, not just in PE, but in other subjects as well. But Mr. Taylor Teach said, is there a misconception that PE is sports coaching? Do we focus on a narrow range of sports? Question mark. Should we be focusing on more cross sport skills and fitness? Where do you sit on that kind of argument debate?
I think, I don't know, I think maybe 50-50. I think, I've been in some schools where, the PE isn't, as a higher standard as it could be and as it should be. But I've also been at schools where, they have a real wide range of sports, Gaelic football, softball, swimming, sports that you don't, have at every school. And they tend to have more engagement, across the school, across all of the classes. A lot more of the pupils get excited to do PE when you do have that, wide variety of sports. And I think with the fitness as well, it, having the opportunity to do Zumba classes, to do, a bit of yoga, a bit of fitness, if you've got like a gym suite with some equipment, it'll appeal to a lot more pupils than you might think. If you give the option of doing, Zumba over, football, you'll find that a lot of girls especially will want to do that. And it's fine. It's, it's still sport. It's still them keeping fit and healthy, especially as they get, higher up in the school year, 10 and 11.
But I like what you've mentioned there, is that even you've talked about breadth, right? Which is slightly different to, I remember the debates that happened on, and there was a point where skills existed stripped of their context, even within PE. So you might be learning, doing a ball skills lesson where it had been, it was about controlling a ball, but it had been stripped of all sport context. So it's just generically controlling a ball in a, and for me, I know I would have hated that as a child. I liked the breadth and I did lots and lots of different sports. I never specialized really, but I always liked them in context, within a set of defined rules with a purpose to them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no point in teaching a skill if they then can't apply it in a game.
Nice. Love that. I might get that written on a t-shirt. There's no point in teaching a skill if they can't apply it in a game. That is brilliant. Okay, right, on to our next little tweet there. So that's our answer to Mr. Taylor Teach. Yes, skills and broad cross base, but there's no point in, teaching in context. There's no point in teaching a skill if you can't apply it in a game. This one's from Liam Keefe 84, and this is a hard one. I don't think we'll ever get to the end of this because this is like a circular argument. So he's saying,
Right.
Not sure if it's necessarily about not liking PE, as in teachers not wanting to do it, but more about possibly being a lot more purposeful and effective with a specialist. Primary PE, for example, student teachers don't get a lot of training. But if we take that approach, right, and we hire in sports coaches or PE specialist teachers, then the other teachers will never get better at it, right? And so you'll never.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no
It's
solution.
difficult. No, it's because if you get, like you said before, if you're getting a specialist in, and especially if, teachers are using that sport premium money to cover their PPA time, they won't go and watch the specialist teach. They won't go and take notes and learn for themselves, because why would they when they've got somebody to do it for them? It's
you kind of just go around in circles, because I can see, like, as a short-term fix that would work, like, for this year, but then you kind of get into a loop of now no one is practicing or getting better at it. That is a toughie there, but I would break that chain. I would invest in some training for staff, because but then I believe in national governing body qualifications, and for me, I'd like to see teachers signing off individual sports, spend the time on
Yeah.
it, get them an FA certificate for football coaching if they're going to be doing upper key stage football. You know,
Yeah.
there's a quality to that, not a half day on your PGCE. But there we
No,
go.
definitely not.
Okay, we have time for one more. Okay, and this one kind of is
Okay.
the last little bit that I'm interested in here, because I don't really know, and maybe this has been talked about, and you know, when you've been through teacher training more recently, maybe this is something. But Lizzie Swan, who actually is one of our hosts, said. Also, she said that 2 primary schools had outsourced PE locally when she was talking with parents, but another one had reduced PE, claiming budget issues. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No, not because of budget. I hear a lot, you know, my mum works in a primary school and she says, you know, time is often a big issue, and you know, or space, you know, a lot of primary schools will only have outside and, you know, a hall, one main hall, and if it's raining and you're trying to, you know, battle it out for a hall, and you know, that's a separate issue. But I don't see why having to cut down on PE because of a budget could ever be, how that could be an issue. Like you don't need a budget to teach PE. You know, you need basic equipment. You don't need to have the most fancy and the most expensive equipment. You know, sometimes just a ball and a couple of cones. You know, it's
It's a
as
really
long as it's
interesting.
something.
It is a really interesting kind of, you know, and I don't know if that's kind of like a smokescreen blame thing, but it came up and I was like, oh, I've not heard of budget needs being an issue
No.
for PE departments. And, you know, okay, so I understand that there are sports equipment that people need, but you know, it's not something that ever struck me before. Well, that does, on that note, lead us to pretty much the end of the show, Ellie. It has been fabulous talking to you this evening, and you know, as I say, I will echo the messages that we have seen in the chat of how much some of your gymnastics advice has boosted people's confidence about teaching it. So wonderful, and thank you for that, and you know, and bringing it to the profession. Any plans for the rest of this week? Are you in school? Do you not know yet?
I'm in doing some PE cover tomorrow yet. I'm quite excited.
Fabulous stuff. Do you know what year group?
No, I don't find out till I get there.
And have you checked the
So,
weather?
I'll see.
Have you checked the weather for tomorrow where you are?
It's going to be raining, so
You could be one of these.
What's going to happen?
Could be one of these PE teachers that I feel sorry for them when I see them out on the AstroTurf in the hammering rain tomorrow. Then.
Yeah, I'm hoping they put me in the sports hall, but we'll see.
Oh, of course. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to play out. Remember, if you're listening, there are more shows tonight, and you can always listen back on ttradio.org/listen back. We will see you soon. Thank you again, Ellie.
Thank you very much for having me.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Okay, and off we go. Nostar, good night, everyone.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.